Good evening, afternoon, and night, gamers. My name is KarQ. Welcome to another week of Reddit Questions from the OverwatchUniversity subreddit. Most uploaded of the week. I'm catching up on the week because last week I was a day late. Now we're pushing it back a day. It's a Thursday. Here we go. One of the week is it bannable to throw a game when you have a cheater? I just had a game where one of our DPS was hard cheating and the enemy called it out. Even without watching the replay, it was pretty obvious they were. I was playing support and told them I would stop healing and was going to report, so hopefully they would get banned before the game was over. My entire team got pissed at me for throwing and said it was arguably just as bad to throw games. I'm not sure if they were grouped together. I should have checked prior to the game finishing, but I didn't think about it. They proceeded to say that they were all going to report me for throwing. I'm not actually sure if they did it or not, and we unfortunately still won the game, but it did make me question if it was possible to get banned for this. First thing I'll say is this is a losing battle no matter which way you swing it. If there's an accused cheater, unfortunately, the best course of action is to kind of just play on and ignore what the enemy team is saying and just play it out. Report after, like check the replay, and if it looks bad, report and move on. There is a lot of instances where sometimes the person who's accused genuinely isn't cheating. It's just a cop-out all chat message from the other team thinking they're cheating, but it turns out they're actually clean. I remember there was a time where on Overwatch 1 we were playing on Volskaya, and I remember my Widow was cracked and killing everybody, and then the enemy team said, you know, draw the game, draw. There, you have a cheater on your team, blah 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 blah, and then he was out of voice chat. So then all of us kind of like, okay, it looks like he's cheating because he's like 20-0. He has like a private profile and everything. And then he joins voice and he goes, question mark, why are you guys not playing? Play. And then we're like, oh, you're cheating. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm streaming. I'm Saya player. And if you didn't know, in 2018, 2019, all the Overwatch League players lived in Los Angeles, Glendale for the Overwatch League at the time. And Saya player was a Korean pro player. He was streaming. And in fact, he was just cracked and just killing everybody. And then we ended up drawing that game when we probably shouldn't have. That's one instance where that could happen. Obviously, there are games where there's a blatant like aimbotter, like completely, if it's like very, very blatant hard lock, 100% unanimous, then of course, if with good direction, the other team, you could just obviously draw as best as you can if it's possible. But if not, yeah, again, I think the best course of action is to just play on, move on, report and move on. Because if you are throwing as well and you're not healing them and it turns out they're clean, you're through the game, right? So unfortunately, cheaters will come and go. It will happen. It's a free-to-play game. There are cheaters out there, and you kind of just have to take it in stride and play on and move on. That's what I usually do. Oh, one more thing I'll add is sometimes you can coordinate a draw, and then you have some bad actors where you think you're about to draw, and then at the last second, they say, never mind, we're not drawing, and then they just like kill you, and they cap the one tick. That's happened before. Hasn't really happened to me in the last like 5 years, but I think early in my Overwatch time, it happened in some games, but obviously my situation's a little different because all my games are streamed, and if somebody does that, it's pretty easy to catch who was the bad actor when you have a unanimous bad sportsmanship moment like that. But yeah. Next one, hot take, the future of Sombra. She's going to get her quality of life invis back. Better than current, but not as good as it was. How do I know this? Well, whenever Blizzard addresses mass community outcry on any given character, they take away a huge chunk of that character's identity and then they walk it back later, but worse. For example, Junkrat removed his one shot for 3 or 4-ish seasons and they restored it to affect the 225 health pool. Same, but worse. Roadhog, they removed one shot hook combo for I don't even know how long, then restored it with the addition of Pigpen ability to fully execute. It's the same, but worse. Hanzo removed one shot on majority of cast for 3-ish seasons, then restored with increased arrow knock time. Same, but worse. Cassidy, the heat-seeking hinder nade to replace Flash Nade. What a joke of an ability the whole time. Now look at it, same as it was, but worse. Give it 1 to 2 seasons, 3 tops. Sombra will get restored to the same, but worse. Hi, puppy. What are you doing here? Give it 1 to 2 seasons, 3 tops, and Sombra will get restored to a same but worse version of her own playstyle. It's almost no coincidence that she's gutted the season of a Widow Mythic skin, but that's another conversation. Okay, gutted the season of a Widow Mythic skin seems like a perfect coincidence, so I can see why people would believe that. I personally don't think that's the case. They did say they were looking at Sombra a while back, and it just happened to line up this way. It's like different teams pushing different buttons at different times. But again, that's a conversation for a different time, whether these theories are true or not. The rest of these, they're pretty sound, right? They walk back on some of the changes, and your take is that they might do the same with Sombra. I think if the community is genuinely unhappy with the direction of it, they definitely do walk it back and make some adjustments, and the way people are responding to the Sombra changes, I'm with you. I'm leaning more to agreeing that they're going to walk back some portion of the stealth timer and probably hopefully decouple it with the translocator and the stealth, because having them locked together just feels kind of awkward. They're either going to bring it back to the initial rework with just some minor adjustments of the stealth timer, but I don't think they're going to bring it back to infinite stealth, and I think they just want to completely remove and tackle that problem completely. But this is not really so much of a question, more about your take of whether Blizzard will do it, and I do think yes, they will to some capacity. They do need to look at her again. Next, everything is so fast in this game. Aiming feels so hard. How long did it take you to get decent? How? Men, I just can't aim for a hoot. I think you mean man there. No matter how hard I try, I suck. I had no issue in TF2, COD, Battlefield, where I guess I was okay, but in Overwatch, I feel like I am just an old boomer. With all them dash, flying characters, small hitboxes, fast speed, it feels so hard. I picked Cassidy, and I do enjoy feeling my aim slowly getting there, but as soon as there is a Juno, Genji, Tracer, Echo, my aim feels like a toddler playing. Guess with time it'll be okay, but in the meantime, what a pain. Listen, there are some transferable skills from other shooters. You didn't have any issues on the other ones where you were okay, but in Overwatch, like, every game has its own physics and its own like boundaries and parameters to play across. Like, does TF2 or does Call of Duty or Battlefield have a Winston flying around or a Lucio wall riding around, right? The thing with this game is that everybody plays at different speeds, and then each hero has different abilities that probably give them movement as well. It's pretty dynamic, so I wouldn't say you need to feel bad about aiming on them because it feels really hard. The best you can do is just continue to put in the hours and get used to how they move. And as long as your aim is consistent across all games, across all shooters, you'll pick it up. I would say it took me like 3 months to get good or get decent to my standards, because I was pretty high ranked in most of the shooters in my teenage years. When Overwatch 1 came out, 2016, I was 23 years old. I'd been playing like Counter-Strike, got to global elite or the rank below it. I was playing like Halo. I was playing in MLG stuff and game battle stuff. So when I played Overwatch, I was like, oh, I'm good at other shooters. I should probably hit the highest rank pretty quick. But it took me 4 months after rank came out to hit Masters at the time. And then I hit top 500 like 2 more months after that. So I hit it January 2017. So that means 7 months actually after the game came out for me to get, I guess not decent, but it did take a couple months to get decent, and then to my standards, 6 or 7 months. And in your case, everybody learns at a different pace, right? Some are visual learners, audio learners. You got to throw yourself into the experience. Some people need to watch separate videos to pick up on things. Don't feel too bad. It'll be fine with time. How do you tank in 6v6? Hi, I've never played Overwatch 1, but I'm an Overwatch 2 tank main, and I'm really excited about the 6v6 tests, but I have no clue how to play 6v6. I can't find any old resources because Google and YouTube are only pushing new stuff which isn't 6v6 related. I have a number of questions I was hoping people who played Overwatch 1 could help answer. All right, number 1. How did the Overwatch 1 tank experience differ? Well, I'll just answer them as we go. Number 1, I think the Overwatch 1 tank experience differed a lot, obviously thanks to tank synergies and being able to use a whole new set of abilities on each other. Actually, that was a big portion of them. For example, a couple of combos were Winston Zarya, where if the Winston jumps in, uses his first bubble, after his bubble expires, you can have the secondary Zarya bubble be used and then soak up enough to buy you time so you have your leap cooldown to jump back out. That's one very basic example. You can do it in the reverse order as well, where you throw the Zarya bubble first, soak up the energy, and then Winston bubble second. That's another option. Same with Ryan Zarya. Ryan charging in, Zarya bubbles them. Ryan D.Va, where Ryan's going in for swings, D.Va holds a defense matrix over the Ryan. These were what people really loved to play when the tanks could combo. Another one, Orisa Halt, where you suck people up and the Roadhog goes for a hook over his shield. Those were bread and butter and everybody loved doing it. Now that being said, as fun as that was, the experience could also be the complete opposite, where there's no synergy and it just wasn't fun at all. People remember the highs of the highs when the combos work out like that, but they forget how bad it can be when you have like Roadhog, D.Va, or like Orisa Wrecking Ball, or Wrecking Ball plus Winston or something. You know, when there's things that don't synergize and each of them play independently, and you have a Winston one trick and a Ball one trick, and they kind of have to do their own things, you kind of just play a very chaotic death match. And that was one of the big downsides as well. But people often conveniently remove that part of their memory away. They only remember the highs of the highs and they forget how bad it could be. That's just something I always have to remind people when they say 6v6 was objectively better. Well, I'm a fan of both. I played both for many, many years as well, right? I have more hours in 6v6 because I played Overwatch 1 for 6 years and only Overwatch 2 for 2 years. But you know, number 2, what are the main and off tanks and what are each of them supposed to do? Basic definition, main tanks can like walk and take space and the off tanks help you hold the space by supplementing and supporting you with resources. That's not always hard and true though. Sometimes the off tank often goes back and peels, right? Even if your Winston's diving in, your Diva's following up, sometimes the Diva has to peel back and help the Ana in the back getting jumped, getting counter jumped by their Tracer, their Doom, their Genji, or only Doom with DPS, Doom and Tracer, and their Winston and Diva, and it's the right call to go back. But they're supposed to kind of play off of each other as often as they can, with some exception. Number 3, how do I decide what tank I want to pick to play well with the other? That comes with experience in the meta and the community. People have often kind of figured out the good synergistic combos, and then there's ones that just don't work at all. And if you it's going to be a little bit to pick up. There might be some guides at the time, but like if somebody locks in Roadhog, pretty much nothing you play will synergize with it per se, besides Orisa. Actually, that's a big one. But Roadhog is generally an independent hero, so some teams ran like Roadhog Sigma, Roadhog Ball, where Ball is kind of independent. Sigma is kind of independent in terms of like them being very durable and they can kind of play off of it. They can kind of just like do their own thing while Hog has the time and space to go off on the side and get his own picks. But in general, if they synergize well with supplemental stuff like Defense Matrix or Zarya Bubble, Zarya was like a big bread and butter in Overwatch 1 because that bubble just basically works with so many different tanks. But with Overwatch 2 tanks like being mixed into it with Ram and Junkrat Queen and Mauga, I'm not really sure what the meta is going to be, especially because they're going to have to do a balance patch and tune anything. That's actually the one thing you'll have to know, and you'll figure that you should know, is that nobody knows what the meta is going to be actually when they do the 6v6 test, and it's going to be fundamentally different because it's going to be maximum 3, minimum 1, at least at first, before they try the 2v2, before they try 2-2-2 again. And maximum 3, minimum 1 is that everybody queues into the 6v6 pool, but only up to 3 of a single role can be played. So you can have 3 tanks, 1 DPS, 2 supports, or 3 tanks, 1 support, 2 DPS, or 3 supports, 1 tank, 2 DPS. So who knows what's going to be in store. Next, what am I supposed to do if my team is too timid? I understand that it's not good to hold W into the enemy team all the time, but there are instances where we need to take an objective or take space, and I feel like I'm the only one trying to do that. I've been playing a lot of Sojourn and Reaper, and I try to take off angles and distract the enemy team so my team can make a push and try to make some progress. But when playing with teams like this, my team isn't applying any pressure, and the enemy team just turns to me uncontested and shoots me, either forcing a retreat or sending me to the spawn room. In these situations, I just stick to my team, hope for the best, or is there something else I'm missing? Okay, so when you're playing a lot of Sojourn and Reaper, you're taking the off angles to distract them. That is good, but your team is too timid to capitalize on the space you are making, and the enemy team shoots you uncontested. So that's actually on you. Your timing is too early. You can't just go in there before your team is ready to attack. Sometimes there will be times where they're a little too timid, where it was like a golden opportunity to do it and they missed the opportunity, but that's where adaptability and timing comes in. You have to adapt to how your team is playing. You can't show up too early or else they, again, turn on you. The thing you do have to do is take the initiative, go a little early because your team is too timid, and that's their signal to start getting aggressive. But instead of you committing to it, you back off. But all you did was apply some pressure as a Reaper. All of them turn around you uncontested, but you Wraith and TP out. But what that did is it hopefully caused your team to kind of be like, oh shit, they're going in, and that's when they start going in. But you kind of did your job because you pulled some people away from the rest of your team because your team is too scared to push in. So it's a little push and pull. You kind of have to read what the team is doing, your team and the enemy team. In the perfect situation, of course, they go in at the exact same time as you, but that level of execution is far and few between, especially in a ranked solo queue game. But it does pick up quite a bit once you reach beyond Diamond. People do kind of understand that with Tracer, Reaper, or Sojourn, or whatever, and all that. One thing I would encourage is Reaper can play pretty independently, but if you're a Sojourn, Going by yourself could be pretty risky because you don't have a true escape, a safe escape like Tracer, like Reaper. And maybe playing with a Pocket or like a Lucio or somebody kind of going with you would help. But a Sojourn, you have to time it and probably wait for your team to do something. Reaper, you can do something early and then back out to kind of make them go, take the initiative. Is consistent top 100 potential for professional play? I'm wondering if consistent top 100 player has the potential to compete at top pro levels of Overwatch with enough practice and teamwork. I see a lot of people say that rank doesn't correlate to actual skill and it's just a resume for getting scouted, but I'm wondering if a player that is just consistently hitting top 100 to 50 has the potential to go pro and compete at a tier 3 or even tier 1 level if they practiced hard enough. Yes, I would say yes. You do have the potential if you're a consistent top 100, but remember, 100 people is 100 people. Like, there's 100 people ahead of you, and if you want to be a pro player, you need to be at the top. I see a lot of people saying that rank doesn't correlate to actual skill. I mean, it does correlate to a decent amount of skill. It actually challenges your adaptability in ranked play, but the biggest difference is the team play is completely different in a team, professional team environment. It is true, it is also a resume to be scouted. That part's true. I'm wondering if consistent has a potential. Yes, of course, potential is always potential. You can definitely compete at tier 3 at top 100. You just have to find the right teams and then go from there, and they'll assess how well you play with your team, how well you adapt with your team, your communication, if you're a good teammate, if you're helping when needed, you're taking the right initiatives, and then eventually you progress to tier 2 and then tier 1 if they practice hard enough. But there's a big gap, I will say. Getting top 100 doesn't mean, I mean, I can hit top 100. Actually, I've done it many times, and I'm not even close to, I mean, I did tier 3 with Overwatch, but we kind of didn't make top 16 at all. And top 16 has like, an our region only has like 6 or 7 people a roster. Like that's 87, what's 7 times 16 teams? We were like ranked 20th team in our one season we competed. And we have good players. We have like Emong, Jay, Apply, Custa, me. And we were like just one game off, ranked 20 out of, and we need top 16. What does that multiply to? 16 times, or 20, we're 20. So there's 19 teams ahead of us, 19 times average 5 players a roster with like 1 or 2 subs. Like that's over 100 players ahead of us. We didn't make it, butting heads and like getting pretty close with them, but you know, 100 people is 100 people. Similarly, this next question is the gap in skill between high masters, low GM, and high GM really that large? Not even remotely close to masters player myself, but I watched quite a few players who are GM, and the way a lot of them talk about these ranks really confused me. From what I've seen, a lot of higher GM players talk about high masters and low GM the way a lower player talks multiple tiers below them. Is the gap really that large and a low GM would get stomped in a GM1, GM2 lobby? As someone who can't imagine anyone in any of these ranks as being bad players, even relative to each other, I'm curious if there really is that big of a gap. I would say yes, there's like a huge gap. It's exponential as you get higher. When you're literally at the top, a consistent low GM player who's never peaked in GM1 might have a hard time. Not to say they can't hold their own, but they'll probably get out like gapped by the mirror matchup on the other team. Not to say that they can't win, but you sometimes will have your champion 5 low, like high GM1, GM2 player go on a bad losing streak and they happen to be in GM5 and then they get pulled into a champion lobby again. They'll be fine because they were just on a rough streak, and that happens to everybody. So the fact that when they get stomped, not necessarily, it just depends what kind of a player they are, but someone who's consistent, but like the biggest takeaway point is the gap really is that large. And then someone who is like very, very deep into GM1, GM2 and basically champion, even comparatively to some pro players, they may not have the chops to hold up, because a lot of pro players don't grind the ranked ladder that much. They probably have champion plus level skill, but they just don't have the minimum 25 wins on an account, and they don't play ranked. They mostly just spend their time practicing scrimming. But if they did, they would probably like take up a bunch of champion slot leaderboards, but it doesn't mean anything to them at that point, right? They want to be really good at scrims, pop off, and make money and win as a team. All right, how do you correctly use Junkrat's trap? I recently started playing Junk again. I really enjoy it, but I noticed some people use the trap way better than me, especially by making it so it is in half in the floor. I've never been able to reproduce this, but I feel like it's quite an important thing to do because my traps end up being destroyed by enemies most of the time. Also, if you have any tips on how to place them, feel free to share. Okay, from your perspective, when you put the trap down, remember it doesn't sink into the floor as much as the enemy perspective. What the enemy sees is not what you see. They see a trap that sinks into the ground more than your perspective, so you may be getting confused there. That's what I assume. That's why you can't reproduce it. But that being said, the best thing to do with your trap is a lot of good Junk players, when they mine themselves in the air, they drop it quietly on the ground because it's pretty silent. and they try to throw it over common choke points where they're not expecting to walk over it. Like if you just throw it in the choke and all 5 of them are coming, they can actually see it before they get there. But in the heat of a battle, a junk will be spamming, fly into the air. These guys on the ground are fighting and the junk's in the air, and he just airdrops a trap, and then they're fighting. They didn't notice it went to the ground and armed, and then bam, they get trapped. And a lot of junks are a lot sneakier with it. Those sneaky ones around the corner don't work as well. In high elos, they usually throw them mid-fight or like into spots where they would get jumped at. So not necessarily at a choke where they're walking to, but if they they have a Doomfist that likes to jump into the backline, they throw it defensively around where they play. All right, last question. How do you deal with flankers as support? The question's in the title. I'm a solo queuer who dropped from gold 4 to silver 3 because of flankers and also levers, but that's not the subject. I'd like to know what are the best supports that are good against flankers like Reaper or Tracer, even though Reaper is more common. The teams I have never peeled the entire game, so I'm left with them farming me if I play supports like Ana or KarQ, which are my most played for the season. Even with good positioning, using most cover or high ground possible, I always get flanked. I can play almost all supports, but in these situations, I go Moira and try to kill the DPS flanking me. The problem is that during this time, my team doesn't receive any heals and I get overwhelmed quickly. And if I'm lucky, I get blamed for not healing. No matter how much I ping, no one turns around for at least 5 seconds. I'm guessing it's me having a skill issue, but I'll take any advice. First of all, Ana, understandably, sometimes you do have to like hold your nade and sleep for the flanker. Your best option is to duel them back, and kill them is the best outcome, and you win that, and it's complete W on your side because you remove that threat. The flanker can't actually go and flank anybody else in your team, and then you can continue supporting your team. But the other like decent scenario is you use your abilities on them. Keep your sleep, keep your nade. You chuck out your sleep and threaten the Reaper to burn his Wraith early and force him to retreat. If he leaves, that wastes his time. He didn't confirm a kill. He wasted your time, but you waste their time and you're back to doing what you can do. And the worst outcome is you just die. You commit to the fight and die. Like if you burn all your abilities and they don't burn anything, you just have to run and buy time for the peel or buy time and distract. Remember, dying is the worst outcome because not only are you out of the fight for the 10-second respawn, but you have to also walk back to the angle you were. Another 10, 15, 20-second walk back to the fight. Effectively, let's just math it out to like 20 seconds of nothing happening if you die. Respawn plus walk back time. Think about it this way. If you are getting flanked and you just run, you run around corners, loop them like it's Dead by Daylight, use your nade, self-nade, sleeps. If you can just buy time run around for 5 to 7, 10 seconds, and then eventually, hopefully they give up, that's better than dying because maybe they leave, the Reaper TP's back into your team, but you're back in after 10 seconds versus being out of the fight for 20 seconds. Think it's relative, right? Now you said KarQ, you're dying on KarQ. KarQ is one of the safer defensive options against flankers because you have Suzu and you can actually fight them back with kill threat thanks to your kunais. That one's a bit of a skill issue, like you said. Ana's a bit more understandable, but also skill related if you can get the sleep dart and the nade and whatnot. The next best tip I have for you is to like scout and be wary of it. If you know they have flankers, you play in positions that limit the angles that they can come from. How is this Tracer like blinking to you? Well, is she like just pathing for free on this certain area? You can expect it. Let's say I'm playing Dorado high ground second. I know this Tracer's coming up the stairs because I saw her underneath my bridge go into the bank. I'm like, okay, so she's gonna come behind me at some point. I'm ready for her. And being ready and anticipating that to happen goes a long way. And obviously, switching to Moira is a pretty like crutch and like safe choice. I don't mind this at all, especially if you're dying too much, but don't worry about getting blamed for not healing. Remember, you're not healing period if you're dead as well. So if you're getting, out of the fight and your team isn't receiving heals, that's fine because you're playing and you're getting a kill. You removed the threat and your team didn't receive heals versus the threat killing you. Threat is alive and you're also still not healing because you're dead. That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it, excuse me. All right, that's it for this week. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.